What up, and welcome to the Roundtable. I am your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. What's going on today, Tyson?
Oh man, same thing as the last two times you asked me tonight. This has been this has been a struggle, but we're gonna make it through this one.
Hey, Tyson, that's the beauty of podcasting. You know, when the technical difficulties act up on us, because it's never us. It's always the
No,
technical fault. You know, then we can redo it, restart, and bring a great product to the listeners out there.
yeah, we just eventually we need Starlink and we'll be good to go. Or whatever it is that Musk is working on that's supposed to like
Now,
we need him as an IT guy. I think that would help.
yeah, Elon Musk, hit us up. We
Yeah,
need if you want an extra side gig, let
yeah,
us know. Or any IT guy out there who can help Tyson and I out. We're not very technical people here.
yeah. It's and like Brad said, it's just not our fault, so it just doesn't make sense.
Exactly. It's never our fault. So, but Tyson, we got a big show today. A lot of things. I mean, it's March now. So, you know what that means, people. It's March Madness time. I'm getting the itch a little bit. I'm not going to lie. Starting to get dialed in on this college basketball. Been following it all season, but now I'm really getting locked in. And if you are out there and you're like, I haven't been following too much college ball, we got you covered right now because we got tournaments starting, conference tournaments in the lower type of section or lower level of Division One. Those winners of those tournaments obviously make the big dance. Then next week we have the big conference tournaments, big major tournaments. That's going to be an absolute appetizer to get us ready for the big dance. I can't wait for those. But Tyson and I are going to go through, give you an early preview. Teams we like, honestly, teams we think are good, mid-major levels that we think you should keep an eye on to advance further in your bracket. So we got you covered in this one if you haven't been paying attention to college basketball. And then Tyson and I are going to get you ready for a big UFC fight this weekend, which I can't wait for. I'm probably going to buy the fight, actually. So I'm excited for that. Tyson, a lot of things happening.
Oh yeah, and we mentioned last week that it was a dry week there, or dry little bit of time after the All-Star break with nothing really going on. So we're kind of diving full face first in it. But Brad, somebody else face planted this week, and that was your boy Rob Manfred. Why don't you explain to people what's going on over in the MLB right now?
Tyson, Rob Manfred definitely face planted, but I think the entire sport face planted. I mean, the MLB lockout situation, for those who just saw it, I mean, it's a mess. Like it's a huge mess for a sport that's finally gaining goodwill, finally gaining traction, starting to gain young fans, getting stars that are marketable again, and being fun. I mean, baseball's been fun the last 2 years. Like it actually has been a joy to watch. And then, of course, right when they do it, they can't help themselves. They have to shoot themselves in the foot. And now they're in a lockout, and it's looking like we may not play a season this year. Opening games canceled. First two series canceled. It is a mess. It's a joke. And I think we got a lot to talk about with this thing, Tyson.
Yeah, I think so too. I guess we can start with just who do you feel, if at all, is more to blame here? Because it's not a blameless thing. It's not all owners being greedy or players trying to take, get a bigger cut of the pie. Because the players' union in baseball, like the revenue split that they get, the NBA is trying to model what the MLB has going on. Because these guys, at the top of the top, they're the strongest union in all of sports. And I think that they're not quite receiving as much blame in the national media for this thing. And I think for good reason, because it's the players play. And we want to watch the players play.
Right.
Nobody goes. Usually owners we talk about in sports, Jerry Jones. Like guys like that are Mark Cuban occasionally. That's because he's on TV. It's mostly loud clowns, meddling within everything else. Not a lot of talk about Robert Kraft outside of the one incident that he had in Florida there for 20 years. And we don't talk about guys in Golden State, Cleveland, or whatever. I'm getting lost in
Dan Snyder, the Washington, Cleveland's owner in the Cavs. I can't think of it either right now. For
Dan Gilbert.
Dan Gilbert, yeah.
But he was famous for writing that letter and being bad. when we were winning, we didn't hear anything about him or out of him. So my point, the larger point is, it's not blameless here, but personally, I want to watch the players play, so I'm leaning more their side. Uh, but do you think it's a little curious?
Well,
It's all negative, owner.
Well, of course it's all negative because that's what the media does. Like they're going to be like, look at these players who are, getting taken advantage of by the billionaire owners, and they just try to paint it black and white. And of course, you're going to have the players who have their media reps, and they're going to take shots at the owners, and then the owners have their media reps who are going to take shots back at the players. Like, no, the players are being unreasonable, and then you got the players saying, well, the owners won't do this, and it's just a mess back and forth. And I'm so sick of this whole blame game thing that's taking place from both sides. I don't care if it's the player's fault. I don't care if it's the owner's fault. What I care about is that there's a baseball season happening. Because for me personally, I wasn't really on baseball, or I wasn't a baseball fan about 4 years ago. Now, I would watch in the playoffs. Of course, I love playoff baseball. But during the regular season, I wasn't consuming crazy amounts of games. I would follow along with it, but I wasn't sitting down and watching game after game, night after night. I was using that time, since we're huge sports fans and it was football and basketball were over, to catch up on TV shows, to do other things that I like. The past 2 years, honestly, it started with the COVID season when it was short and it was quick. That got me back into baseball. It felt like it mattered, felt like it was big. The stars were fun. It was a great storylines. And then that carried over into the next season, where I watched more baseball last year than I can remember in a long time. And I'm not talking just my team, the Yankees, or my other team, the Phillies. I was watching the Marlins because I want to see Sandy Alcantara. I want to see him pitch. Watching the Padres, I wanted to see Fernando Tatis. Like, guys I wanted to see play, games I wanted to see play, I would tune in. I want to see Major League Baseball. Them locking themselves out, potentially missing a season, is catastrophic. It's insane. They can't help themselves, Tyson. They shoot themselves in the foot constantly over things that the large public, like us, don't really care about. It's mind-boggling to me that it's gotten to this point.
Yeah, it's well, is it though? Because this is the league for this to happen in. This is the league where winning the World Series, it's just a piece of metal when you get the trophy. This is that guy. This is those people. This is everything's under the rug, and then when it comes out, it was always somebody else's fault. This is the league of finger pointing. Of all the major leagues, this is the one where nobody's ever done something wrong. Somebody either got lied to, tricked, whatever. I will say, as a Mets fan, I think I speak for every single Mets fan. Please play the season. This is the most excited I've been. 2016, I was pretty excited following the World Series appearance there, but come on, you're gonna take this away from me now? I just want to watch DeGrom and Scherzer go back to back. I just come on. But I do wonder if there's gonna be a Cohen rule of some sort or something, because I know that it's the fame, like Jerry or Steinbrenner and those guys. They spend money and it's all famous, but nobody's come in and just been like, I have more of it than all of you guys. You want to get into a bidding war because I win. I don't.
Right.
Before it was like, and we talk about this too, the bottom line of the business, and that still is very true, and that's part of the reason they're locked out. But I wonder if other owners are like, hey, this is when I bought a team, I was the richest guy. This isn't fair now that he can do that, and I think that might be what's going on too.
Well, some people, Mets fans mainly, say this is a conspiracy, this lockout, because the Mets may be good. It's the other thing about this, and we touched on it, is the compensation levels. And if you want to look up the details, feel free. I'm not going to bore you guys with that, with the specifics. Like, oh, they were here and they offered that. Go look at that up on your own if you want to do that. What the main thing is that the minor league levels and the Major League Baseball players, because it's all a union, all the players are in a union, the strongest one in all of professional sports. They're saying that the minor league players need to be compensated better. Now, the issue with that is the owners of the major league teams, they don't make any money in the minor leagues. So they're like, you're asking us to spend more on something that doesn't make us money. Like, that doesn't make any business sense for us. And the player's like, well, it affects, it's part of your organization. So that's a whole thing that they're into. And I mean, as a humanitarian aspect, for me personally, like I think these players should get paid more than what they are. They shouldn't be living out of their cars or their vans. But at the same time, I understand that it's a business. And if it was me with all that money, it was me running a team and I know I need to make money, I'd be probably like, I don't want to pay these guys much either. Like they don't do anything for me. Especially when it's like we've seen the Shohei Otanis, we've seen the Dice K's, like we've seen the Tanakas, all the Dominican players, all the Cuban players that come over. They only stay maybe in AAA ball for a year or two, or they just go straight to the majors. Like they can get players in the world because it's so flat and scouts can go anywhere now and get high level players that a lot of these owners and teams are looking at their minor leagues, like their A ball and their double A ball. Like we don't even need that anymore. So I actually think, Tyson, there's going to become a point where a lot of these minor league levels are dissolved and we may only be looking at a AAA level or a AAA or the major level. I think that may be something that they got to look into. But then you go back to the players union. Why would they want that? That limits their power. They don't have as many people. They don't have these people paying dues to make them rich. I mean, it's just a whole convoluted mess that's a little bit more complicated than, well, owners are being greedy or players are being selfish.
That would be a long form source of, I guess a long form way to outsource to the rest of the world there if they dissolve those. Because I think that would hurt collegiate baseball, probably some levels of high school baseball as well. If it was like, well, I mean, it's AAA or the bigs, like that's kind of that's like what I have. But I just think this whole thing is like, they're finally, like you said, goodwill, and they're getting back in people's homes. And, it's not like the NBA is taking advantage of, at least the last couple of years. I mean, ratings have been here and there, but we thought for a while they were on pace to catch up with the NFL. Like it felt like the NBA, it feels like that's almost at a cap right now. Like this is as popular as this current generation of the NBA can be, I guess. But baseball could. There's a couple million viewers out there, that are looking for something to do on a Tuesday. It just took at least 2 weeks away from them, and it seems like you're going to take a lot more. And people they don't know who the fuck most of the guys on the teams are.
Exactly.
So, like, it's I think marketing needs to be improved as well.
I think a lot of it, just everything surrounding Major League Baseball. Again, I'm going to use this phrase. They constantly shoot themselves in the foot. Market your players, which they don't do. Let them have fun, which they don't allow because they're BS, bullshit, unwritten rules. All that nonsense that's been going on since the 40s. I mean,
way before that, 1800s. This is like the oldest. This is like this. I'm pretty sure the Illuminati was started after baseball.
Yeah, with like Smiley Joe and like
they have fake names. That's how old baseball is. Yeah.
Tuesday Terry pitches to all that crap. And it's gotten to the point now where the sides are so emboldened and they're so stubborn in their own ways and that they can't even sit down in their own room together. Like reports coming out, Jeff Passan reporting, they had to drop their papers or proposal off. They left after 15 minutes because they couldn't stand each other. It's like, that's just not how you should be doing business. And especially when you should be working together for the product. Like you guys are all representing Major League Baseball, representing a sport. Like,
and what the hell happens after this? Like, you're supposed to go talk to, like, a lot of these dudes are free agents and they're just like, hey man, I know what I said about it. It's like it's a catch-22 deal here, but it's not going to be resolved for a while. And I think that's why I was most upset yesterday with Manfred. Instead of just coming out and saying that, it was the typical diplomatic way of, saying nothing, when in reality, I would have gained respect for him. And I think we all would have gained clarity if he was like, look, we're still really far apart on a couple things.
And let's talk about Manfred a little bit here, because I think, yes, he's the commissioner. And I think people forget. It's like, well, Manfred should figure this out. It's like, well, Manfred also works for the owners. Like, the owners are his bosses. So he, in some way, is not just a third party here. Like he's technically on the owner's side in a certain aspect, but he also needs to be mediating between the players union rep, between the players, and figuring out what's best for the sport. That's why he's the commissioner of the sport. Rob Manfred, I think, is horrible. I think he's so out of touch with what baseball fans want. He's so out of touch with what the players want. I think he may even have a touch with the owners want. Like, I don't know what he's added. I don't know what success he's done for Major League Baseball. And now we have the first work stoppage by canceling games they've had since when it was the last one, like 3 decades ago or something like that, even longer. This is terrible.
Oh, that made me laugh out loud. Just the image of in your mind, Rob Manfred is looking at these proposals and just adding his own stuff in. At the end, he's like,
Well,
"No, the
he
owners
did.
don't
Did you hear
actually."
this? Like their final offer, they tried to add a pitch clock, and just it's like that's your final. We didn't even discuss that, and he just throws in there like, "What do you think about this, boys?" It's like we hate it. How are we going to deal with that?
Yeah. I mean, that's like literally that's the worst person in your fantasy football league that just adds at the last. You've been talking about a deal for a week, and then he just adds. I also need Patrick Mahomes. It's like, oh
Right.
no, that's not how this works. But back to Manfred. I mean, this is like it's a pattern of just mismanagement, and it doesn't feel like he really cares about where baseball's at and where it's going to go. Because, like, I mean, if you go back through the history of baseball, they've had some great commissioners. You know, they've had some like if you look at Judge Mountain Landis from, I know that the racial things and stuff like that going on at the time were not good, but outside of that, baseball grew a huge amount, and it just kind of built all the way on that until the last couple. But it's taken a huge dive in popularity, I feel like, under Rob Manfred's tenure, and I think part of that is because, like, Roger Goodell also works for the owners, and Roger Goodell also catches a lot of flack, but he'll stand up for the players sometimes, and he'll stand up for himself when he needs to. Manfred feels like he is the punching bag for both sides. Nobody respects him, and he's just going to, like, essentially right now it feels like be a mouthpiece for the owners, not care so much about the players, which doesn't gain him respect on either side.
Exactly. And that's the biggest issue, I think, when you have Rob Manfred, who's supposed to be the face of this arbitration, not the face of the sport, because Roger Goodell's not the face of the sport, but he's the face of the logo or the shield. Like we think of the shield, I think of Roger Goodell. When you think of the MLB, like the logo, like okay, who's the MLB overall? It should be Rob Manfred, and it should be somebody who represents what the best interest of that sport is. Goodell's taken it to new heights. Rob Manfred has, if this doesn't go through, he's going to tank it. The players are going to hate him, and the owners are going to be like, "This guy's just a weasel, and we can just boss him around, and we're going to do whatever we want to him."
And he's going to have cost them money at the end of this whole thing, and I don't think they're going to care that much if they get half of what they wanted,
right,
and lose a bunch of money.
Now here's
done that day one.
Here's the $1 million or $1 billion question, Tyson. Do they play a season?
Would define a season? 162 games.
Let's start here. Do they play at all?
I think maybe. I think there's a chance that what I can envision in my head is something like an 81 game season or something, or this pushes all the way up to where the normal All-Star break would be or something, and then they just try to put some product on the field. But sneakily, what I want to happen is them to play about 81 games. And the people to be able to say, well, that was like way more fun than a normal MLB season. Like I was invested, like in the NBA, you know, if Phoenix, I'm a Suns fan, if they lose to Portland tonight, Booker's in COVID protocol, Chris Paul's out, they lose 3 in a row, it doesn't look good. Could impact things in baseball. You know, if the Astros lose to the Marlins in the middle of whatever month halfway through, it's like, who cares? Like you're gonna lose. The good teams lose 65 of these things. So I think it's too long, and I think that there's a chance the product has better viewership, maybe if it's not 162, because it is hard. Like you were mentioning at the top, I watch most Mets games. I don't watch all of them because it's impossible, but I know a lot of people that are like, why would I tune in? Like, I'll figure out who's good in October. Like, right. What do I need to watch now for?
And the problem is with that too is like it comes back to the money thing. Like you're really going to give up 162 games. We have these massive TV contracts. We got our stadium revenue. Like the players, okay, wow, I'd like to play less games. Okay, yeah, but would you like to have $150 million or 350? So Get out there and play 162. Like, it just comes back to greed and like just what people want in general out of the sport. Me personally, what I think if they play a season this year, I do, and I'll put a number. It's going to be less than 140. I think it's more than what you think, Tyson. I think it's going to be around like 130, 120. I think they're probably going to cancel April.
Could you see that if that works well in the marketplace? If people seem to show an appetite for that, the next CBA is going to get real weird.
It's man. Maybe they sign like a quick deal on this one and just like come back and see, but I don't know. I mean, you know what these guys want. They're going to lock in like a 10, 15-year CBA,
yep.
Hate each other for all 15, and then, okay, well, we go back to the drawing board and figure it out. Like, oh, man.
The one thing I will say about MLB owners is that they seem to be, I know we mentioned the unions are much stronger in the MLB, but NFL owners are way better negotiators from my perspective, because they're looking like, people are like, oh, why did they put taunting in? They just want to ruin the NFL. No, they gave the players something they wanted, and then they took away celebrating. So then the next CBA, they can give them back celebrating and get something else that they wanted even more than that. Where in baseball, it's like, I'm not giving that up. And then 10 years later, it's like, I'm so mad at you because negotiate long-term thinking here, fellas. How'd you get $1 billion just making snap decisions all the time?
I don't know. And that's the thing. I think it is a difference in mindset of the owner and between the two. I think, I don't know if a lot of these MLB owners even love the sport of baseball.
Oh, I doubt it.
Where I know, all the NFL owners love football, and maybe some are more involved than others in terms of decision making, but at least I think all of them love the sport. And I don't think maybe probably less than half even love baseball. They just own the team. They want to make money on it. That's how they view it.
Yeah, and some of them are just incredibly wealthy, and they just lucked into this thing. It's like, oh, I make good return on my investment here.
Exactly. So very frustrating situation with Major League Baseball. Hoping both of us that it gets resolved. Not too confident about that with that clown Manfred running the show there. So we'll see what happens. But we had to sound off a little bit on that. And then if you were wondering our thoughts on that, well, there you go. But we do have some positive stuff to talk about here. So we're going to get into it with March Madness. Man, I can't wait, man. I mean, what's your favorite part about it? Is it the upsets? Is it the bracket? Is it all the games on opening weekend?
Opening weekend, I think.
Yeah.
Opening weekend, and then it kind of, so for me, year over year, it changes what I like most. But the one thing that always, like, there's nothing like that first, like, Thursday, Friday, or Friday, Saturday, or whatever it is. Like,
so great.
And then if you've ever been to the tournament in person, it's like watching like Northwest. I was at the Northwestern game when they made the tournament, and it was just, and it was in Spokane. I think we were either in Spokane or Portland, but it was like electric, and it was just like, you have people that don't care cheering for a team a school they didn't go to, because like it would be. It's one of those things where, and I feel this way because I have gone to school at schools that don't win NCAA tournament basketball games. So I kind of am player, like last year I was all Cade Cunningham. That was like, or I was Alonzo Ball, and as who I like to watch. But that opening weekend, man. And then college basketball is the one sport I think of among any, even more so than college football, even though we don't talk about it that way, where it's the narrative is about your coach.
Right.
Because that's the most popular Michigan State basketball figure right now is going to be Tom Izzo. Like, when you look at that sideline, you think him. Is Coach K's last run. Guarantee Jim Nantz mentions that 950 times
absolutely.
in the first half of the first broadcast of their first game. But it's and that's what's so cool is, like, for me, I'm like, oh man, it's, this guy is making this 18-year-old into a superstar. In reality, it's probably a lot different.
Right.
But it's the narratives that with the coaches that you can almost, like, I love Jay Wright for a long time just because he was the cool guy
Mhm.
in college basketball. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you laid it out like very eloquently. I think when just like that's like the magic around March Madness. It's that first weekend where you're like, okay, it's like a kid in a candy shop. I mean, people who I know who don't watch college basketball or consume it like the way I do are like, oh man, TV's on all day. I'm like, you don't even like college. Like, I like it. March Madness, baby.
Yeah.
Like, let's
Yep.
go. Like, it's just so great and so exciting. Like, everybody's filling out a bracket. Oh man, I had this team. Oh, they lost. Like, all right, what's the next one? It's just like going through it and you fill it out. And I do think my favorite is definitely opening weekend. Just all the games going on, just some crazy stuff is going on, like happening on one game. Okay, I'm on True TV watching Duke, because I want to watch them smack a 15 seed. But then I got to watch that 8-9 because it's coming down to the wire. Oh wait, oh my God, 15 is in a tight game with a 2, and just all this energy happening. Then just go down the list. Boom, boom, boom. That's Thursday. Are we gonna do it again on Friday? Here we go. Like, it's just so great. So great. I can't wait for that. And then Tyson, we even get an appetizer with the conference tourneys too. It just feels like it. It's
That's I think that like couple days there that we have of the ramp up from Sunday to like the opening tip of the tournament where everybody can win their, like, it's outside of obviously, the 16 seed. I don't think he'll ever beat a 1 again. I didn't think it was ever going to happen. But like, a 15 can beat a 2. And you can talk yourself into this is the reason why. Because look at what they just did in the conference tournament. Well, meanwhile, the 2 lost. They were supposed to be a 1 seed. They lost, and they're real. And then the games start, and there's just this feeling of anything could happen. And in reality, that's not how it goes. But
yeah, a
like,
lot of the times.
there's a couple times a year that just make us like, I told you, and it's you forget the 67 that you got wrong.
All you need is one.
Yeah.
All you need is one. All right. Well, this year we'll go through it a little bit, and like we mentioned, we have conference tournaments, so the seeding's not all the way set. Obviously, we don't have the bracket, but here's some projections that we have. And the 4 number ones projected now are Gonzaga, Baylor, Arizona, and Kansas. Now, Kansas lost to TCU last night, so that's or 2 nights ago, depending on when you're listening to this, or at least this week, depending on when you're listening to this. I think they may drop down a bit in that 2 spot. Auburn, Kentucky, Duke, and Purdue. Purdue just lost. Where did they end up? Duke's got a big game against Carolina. So those are mainly the top 8 seeds, and there's some floating around. I think maybe Villanova could jump up there. Maybe Wisconsin gets to a 2 level. How does Texas Tech? Maybe they climb. But kind of convoluted. Out of those teams, you mentioned to me you didn't know who really the best team in the country was, and I agree with you. Out of those teams, who do you have the most confidence in, or who out of the big favorites, I guess, are you looking at like, hey, they can make a deep run?
And it's really tough because I can see scenarios in which they all get bounced earlier than we think. I don't think Gonzaga bows out early. Because they haven't in quite a long time, and they're probably the most talented team in the country, as well as being super well coached. I don't think Baylor would get bounced out early. Or I have a harder time seeing that happen just based on the way they play. Like, if they get through the first game and you have 24 hours to prepare to play these guys, you better have 6 ball handlers, and they better all be going pro because, it's going to be tough. But, I mean, I don't even really want to talk about it because I know where it's going to get your head at, but there's a very, very, very talented team down there
You can say
in North
it.
Carolina. I like Duke, but it's just I can't handle them winning this year just because Coach K's last year. I'm not going to stop hearing about that until
you're dead.
It's but I think it'd be a wonderful story, and I think that they honestly have a team that can compete because, to me, when they had the high-end talent, they didn't really have the experience there with Zion and RJ. If you want to go back those years, when they have the experience, they haven't really had that super top-end talent. And this year, it's like it seems to be as close to a perfect mixture as Coach K's put together down there in quite a while.
I say this. I know the Duke teams that can win. I watch literally like
Yeah,
every
this
game I
is one.
can from Duke. This is one of them. Like this team reminds me exactly of that Trey Jones, Jaleel Okafor, Justice Winslow, Grayson Allen team. Really big, long, strong interior, really good guard play, athletic, and can defend. And I'm looking at it, and I've seen this before when they beat Butler. Same thing. Have interior, have great guard play, have great shooting. This team can win it all. Really can. They're at plus 1,300 right now on FanDuel to win it all. I like that's definitely going to be a ticket of mine that I'm holding. Definitely a ticket of mine. Now, the favorite's Gonzaga plus 370.
Sheesh.
All the metrics say, all the advanced metrics, all the
Yeah.
people who handicap analyze college basketball teams say this Gonzaga team on paper and on metrics is better than the team last year. And all we heard about last year, because we had Corey Kispert and Jalen Suggs and Drew Timme was a monster. Like, man, Gonzaga was awesome last year, had their offense. And everybody's like, well, this team's actually better than last year's team, which is pretty crazy to think about because it feels like they've flown under the radar a bit because of that loss against Baylor. That's a team I think don't be surprised if Gonzaga is back there. I'm just saying that.
If real quick, if Chet Holmgren played for Kentucky, how many times do you think you're seeing that guy on your social media feeds?
A lot.
Is it nightly? If he played for Duke or anybody else besides Gonzaga, they post it like you go look. You missed the game. They won by 15. You go check. He just has 16, 12, and 7, and like that's a blurb.
And those are 7 blocks.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly.
But the problem is he looks like a Ticonderoga pencil.
He does,
and I think people can't really get behind that. Like he makes Kevin Durant look like Zion. You know what I mean? Like, he is skinny.
He needs to get in touch with Zion's trainer, maybe.
Maybe they can flip. Maybe they can give each other a little weight.
Yeah,
I think
that
that's.
work.
I think we came up with the solution there. But running through this, so Arizona's the second favorite, plus 600. What do you think of Arizona?
I don't know. Like I'm being like, what are they? I think 26-3 right now. I looked the other day. I think they've rattled off a couple.
They just housed USC.
Yeah,
I mean they blew their doors off.
I think they're capable of being that team, but I know it's a different regime completely and different style even of the way they play, but I have been burned so many times by Arizona basketball in my life that it's going to be like they're the Power 5 version of Gonzaga. It felt like there for a long time where they got theirs early, right, with Richard Jefferson and Channing Frye and those guys, and then they were just the Aaron Gordon team felt like it was that team every year for like 6 years. So I kind of got to see it, but I've been real impressed with them throughout the year. It's just when it comes to West Coast basketball over the last couple of years, like it feels like give me the 4 seed in the Pac-12 to make the deepest run out of everybody,
UCLA did that unexpectedly last year coming out of the playing game. My thoughts in Arizona, just similar to you, I don't know because they haven't been here before in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And Tommy Lloyd coming over from Gonzaga is installed this offense that's pretty crazy when they're hitting shots. I mean, they can blow you out and embarrass you when they're hitting threes and they're running up all down the court. At the second overall favorite, I can't see that. I can't give that to them. I mean, these guys haven't been here, man. Like nobody in that organization, nobody in that program has come even close to sniffing a championship. And now all of a sudden, after one good year, I'm supposed to expect them to run through a bracket. I can't get there. If they're a 1 seed, they'd probably be the 1 seed I have leaving early. As one, because I think it can happen, and especially if they play somebody who's good at defense, can weather the storm. I think that's something I'm looking at. But I don't know. Like with you, Tyson, I don't know what this team truly is. They have nights they get off, they look off, and then all of a sudden they flip a switch and they go bananas. And you're right though, 25-3. I mean, that's a hell of a season, especially what they were the past few years.
It's just like with them, I'd rather take my chances on Duke or Kentucky or Baylor to repeat than look at them as even. I mean, I'd rather do those things than bet on Gonzaga too, to be honest.
And Kentucky at plus 750. Oscar Tshiebwe probably going to win the Naismith Player of the Year award. I mean, he's a walking double-double, rebounding machine. and Kentucky's gotten better throughout the season. And like you mentioned, Baylor plus 1,000. It's hard to repeat, especially in college basketball in this wacky tournament. Auburn at plus 1,400. Now they're interesting because they probably have the number one overall pick in Jabari Smith, who's a stud, 6'10", silky, really elite ball handling for that size. But they got off to a hot start, won like 20 games in a row. They've just kind of slowed down, and they don't look as lethal as they once were. And it seems like they're on the back burner a little bit. What are your thoughts on Auburn? Like, how realistically, how far do you think this team can go?
There's a world where they return to that early year stuff, and I think the pieces of that team is still littered all throughout there. I mean, don't get us wrong; it's not like when we say falling back to earth, it's not like they crashed like a meteor or something. They're still hanging out like up here with the best teams in the country. It's just when they took off for a while, it was everyone's like, "This is a wide open year." It's like, no, it's not. Are you watching these guys over here? But yeah, now I think they've stumbled a couple times here in the last few weeks, and they're another one of those programs, man, where it's just like I wouldn't be surprised if Auburn won the whole thing. I think people would be, but they feel like it's a better version of the Isaac Okoro team to me a little bit. Just
okay,
they're super athletic and they're going to do the things that Auburn does, but the problem is that other teams at the top consistently do the things that Auburn does well. They do them better. Like if Auburn wants to get into a slugfest with any of these guys, I don't think they can beat the top teams like that, and I don't think they can outscore any of these guys either. So it's kind of like you're relying on your number one guy to be the number one guy, which we both think that he is, and take over games. But it's harder to ask that of an 18-year-old freshman in college than people would be led to believe. Otherwise, Kentucky and Duke and all these guys would have tons of banners.
Exactly. That's well said. And I think Auburn, their weakness is guard play.
Yep.
And I put a premium on guard play in this tournament. I mean, we see it year after year. Elite guards win and go far in this tournament. And I think that's their biggest weakness. They just don't quite have that explosion. Going down, I mean, Villanova, okay, we know what they are. They're gritty. They can rebound. Wisconsin, I mean, kind of the same type of deal. Texas Tech, really similar profiles for all three of those teams. Let's kind of get out of that. Let's go down to the fifth seed line here. Some interesting teams down here. Arkansas, Houston, Texas, Alabama, as it's projected now. Alabama just lost tonight or this week, whenever you're listening. So they'll probably bump down a little bit. They've had a disappointing season. That's an interesting seeding line there. I mean, Arkansas is explosive under Musselman. They've gotten really close. They lost on a last second shot. I want to say maybe 2 years ago. I mean, Houston, we know what they are under Kelvin Sampson, man. I mean, they get after you, they defend, and they hit threes. I mean, they're good. What do you think out of that line? Like that 5 to 6 range, is there a team that you think could be a dark horse team that can run and win a region and go to a Final Four?
Stop disrespecting Montana Tech head coaching legend. I mean, I like Houston. I mean, this team I think is much better than sitting on the 5 line. Watching them, I think I don't remember. I looked earlier. I think Kim Pom has them in the top 10 even somewhere. Like this team is really good. They're nameless a little bit, and I think that's kind of hurting them. But I think LSU has the guard play to play with anybody on that 6 line. I think that there are some teams, and even if you want to go below that, I know unlikely to win a region, but a team like San Francisco sitting there looking like at a 9 right now. Ken Palm loves them, and I know people start getting into the metrics at this time of year. If you haven't watched San Francisco, take a look. They're a treat. They're a really good basketball team.
Yeah, they are.
Out of the middle of nowhere. It didn't feel like this was coming at all. And I think that they're one of the ones where if they're in the same region as Arizona and they're matched up in the round of 32, Sweet 16, when they meet up, if it was 1-9?
To be round of 32.
32, right, yeah. And if they're playing, I'm going to give the edge to Arizona, but I'm not going to be shocked if that game's going to at least be close.
That might be my early exit for Arizona. I might have to throw that down, make a shot. I mean, it's they defend. hit shots. I mean, they play hard too. So I like Arizona. San Francisco. That's a good thought there. That's a nice team to highlight. Out of that 5-6 line, I mean, I like Houston. I mean, losing Marcus Sasser, that stinks. I mean, that's a name that year's going to come back, and I think they lost their second best player, the forward. I'm forgetting his name right now, but that's a big hit for them. But they figured it out. Gotten hot down the stretch. 24-4. That's a good season. No matter who you are and what conference you play in. I'll run through this quickly. I like Arkansas a lot in the 5th seed. I think they're a lot better than what their record is. I think they'll make a surprise run. I think maybe they can even go to the Elite 8. Honestly, I love Musselman as a coach. I like a lot of their pieces. I think they play hard, so I like them. Houston, we talked about them. Texas, I think they could be sneaky. I mean, they've had a disappointing regular season, but I'm thinking how it plays in the tournament. They rebound and they defend and they play really hard. It's just the offense that's lacking them. That hurts in the regular season. But if you can defend, that's a big plus in this tournament. And I think they may be able to make a deeper run than people give them credit for, because you look at their record and you can't really remember a big win that they've had. Like, Texas kind of stinks. Then all of a sudden, they're making a Sweet 16 Elite 8 run. You're like, oh, this is the Texas team we thought was going to come into the year. So I'm going to keep my eye on them. I absolutely hate Alabama. I think they're terrible at defense. I think they'll get bounced early. Probably, and they might even get bounced on a 12-5 matchup. I'm not going to lie. I might have to pick that depending on who the 12 is. You already mentioned San Francisco, Tyson. Let's touch on some of these lower seeded teams that jump out to you.
I'll give you 3 right now, and I know not really lower seeded, but just quickly, teams that I think people need to pay attention to. St. Mary's is good. Like, actually good. They're like actually good this time.
Really good. Not fluky win over Gonzaga, like good.
No, yeah, they're like this is different. And then where was I at? I had it written down. Oh, Connecticut is back. UConn looks to me. I think that UConn is resembling a little bit of that monster that seems to show up every 11 marches or however long it is between. But it looks like one of those teams again. And then to round it out here, I think Murray State is good.
Oh, and I think they're good.
I think that nobody knows that Murray State is that good. I think if I could walk out of if you were going to Calcutta and you could walk out with Murray State, San Francisco, St. Mary's, teams like that, and not go crazy getting a Duke or something like that. If I paid the same amount of money for those guys as other people were paying for Gonzaga, I would feel pretty good about where I was at. I think all of those teams that I just mentioned have the potential to be playing into the second week of this tournament.
If Murray State plays against Alabama, you know damn well I'm putting Murray State to win, because they will beat that team. I like those highlights, Tyson. The other one, the ones that jump out to me, if you haven't seen a lot of Colorado State, I mean, Tyson mentioned with San Francisco, Colorado State is a treat to watch. Really good offensively, run awesome offensive sets, rebound the basketball, and are really fundamental. I love watching them play. That's a team I think. So if you haven't seen that team, that's a team that you should target to advance past the first. I don't care who they play. I like that team a lot. Let's see here. Who's another? Towson.
Oh yeah.
Towson. That's a team on the 14 seed right now. They score the basketball really easily. They're somebody who can upset, like a team that gets hot, upsets the top seed. I like the way Towson plays. Remember that name if they can win their conference.
Loyola Chicago is good again, and I'm staying away. But I know everyone else in your office pool or whatever that you do this with, that's going to be, I think they're right now the early team. When you're putting brackets together, you got to hope you got to zig one of the people's egg. Yep. And I think this is going to be the team. Oh, I know them, and then but this year I don't think they're as strong. Last year, I was a big Illinois fan, but it just that was a horrible matchup for Illinois, that Loyola Chicago team. And every metric loved them. And if you watched them play during the year, it was how in the world are they matched up with these guys right now? They should have been a 4 seed. This team is not that one.
North Texas at the 12 line. They play at the slowest pace in college basketball. They're really efficient. That's something to keep in mind during this tournament. Now, they have to win their Conference USA. I don't think that's going to be a multiple bid league. I think maybe, if anything, they'll give it to, I guess Memphis is in the Americans. So I think it is only a one bid league now. So they're going to have to win their tournament to get in. That's a name to remember. Really, really fundamental on offense, really deliberate, and they execute well. Memphis, like I just mentioned, I mean, they were terrible up and down roller coaster to start. They've started to figure that out. They might be a scary matchup for a team on the 12-5 line.
And look, this is probably the dumbest one that I have, but I'm not giving up on my Bonnies. I'm not giving up on St. Bonaventure this year. I think they might make it as an at-large team. And then I talked about it a little bit, but experience wins these games. And this is like, return their top 6 guys from a team that made the tournament a year ago or something like that. This team is deep. Been pretty honestly disappointing to this point so far in the season, and I haven't caught too much of why that is, but they're one of those teams that I think just experience-wise can muster their way by a freshman-laden team, for instance.
Wyoming, another team as well, really good at defense. I think the neutral court may hurt them a bit. They're really, really good at home. They're really good when they have momentum. The neutral might hurt them, but that's a very solid team, especially sitting in that 10 range, 9-10 range to target for the little 8-9 matchup that can go either way. Anything that you think there's going to be a big upset this year, Tyson? I mean, I'm looking at the 16s and the 15s. Nobody really jumps out to me that I think can compete truly at that high level. I like Colgate. I think they have an NBA player on that team, actually. So, anytime that happens, like, when Lehigh beat Duke, I mean, CJ McCollum just went nuts. And, he was better than Jabari Parker. Like, that just happened. So, that could be a case with Colgate. I think the problem is it's so top-heavy with talent for those top 8 seeds that I think it'd be hard-pressed to see that. And then Jacksonville State, I don't think they have the explosion. They're definitely not like a Florida Gulf Coast where they can just outrun you and outdunk you. They're a little bit more deliberate, and I think that hurts you when you are facing somebody who's more talented. So nothing really jumps out to me from that line. Can you see it this year, Tyson?
No, but that's the point, right? True. Like if you could see it coming, you'd be the richest man in the world. I think like Long Beach State could be a fun one to watch just because Brad and I are both huge Last Chance U fans, so that's something there. But it's they have good players too. They seem to get a lot of drop downs. But like, I'm not going to come on here and say I believe in the 15 to beat a 2. We don't even know the damn bracket.
Right.
I can't come out and say that.
Shout out Joe Hampton, Last Chance U. Can't wait for the second season. That's going to be fun. Any closing thoughts you want to just mention? Maybe some broad thoughts on this, Tyson?
I mean, I can't wait. It's super exciting. It kind of is a bummer, as conference tournaments move more and more to neutral sites for much like we opened the show talking about greed. But that to me, that's the charm of college basketball. It's the fact like you had to go in somewhere else to win a conference tournament. That's like if Kimba, just that step back and stuff. It's cool it happened at the Garden, but if it happened in Pittsburgh, I think it would have been a little bit, a little nastier. I'm remembering a little bit more fondly if that's the case. So give these guys a chance to do that.
I can't wait as well. Obviously, I think this is going to be a fun one. I don't know if it's going to be, oh man, this is going to be the craziest March Madness ever, because we said that for literally every March Madness ever. But I think it's going to be fun. There's going to be some close games. I think we're going to get really high level basketball, especially down the stretch. For that first weekend is going to be so fun. I can't wait for that. And if you guys out there, who do you like? Honestly, I mean, hit us up on Instagram, on Twitter. We got the links. We got our ats and our let us know. I mean, I'm curious what you guys think. I mean, maybe you've watched more West Coast ball than me, wherever you're at. Maybe you watch more Big East ball than me, wherever you're at. Do you agree with Tyson with UConn? I mean, Seton Hall, I think could be good. Just I don't know if they can score enough. So if you have different opinions, we want to hear it. So shout us out and contact us on social media. Or if you even have a question about it, obviously we'll answer it on here. So that's our March Madness preview. Now, Tyson, to close the show, I mean, talk about a show that's going to happen on Saturday. UFC 272 Colby Covington versus Jorge Masvidal in maybe the biggest grudge match or biggest hatred-fueled match that the UFC's ever seen.
It's so
I can't wait for this.
This shit is for the birds, brother. I'm like, I don't. First of all, like, if you don't know anything about like this whole drama between the two of them, essentially boils down to multiple people. Kobe being a bad teammate, George trying to be the guy to stand up for his camp, and there's been a lot of things that have been said that are, I'm not going to repeat because some of them they're pretty far because they used to be, supposed best friends turned mortal enemies. I'm not buying all of that at the moment. I think they don't like each other, but I think that Kobe's pretty good at selling fights, and he's pretty good at being a dickhead outside of selling fights too. But he's really good at it with the microphone in front of his face. So I think that's getting people excited. But I think that there is a pretty good chance here, Brad, that this is going to be one of those ones that Dana White sells and sells and sells, and everyone is expecting fireworks. And I think Colby Covington has every intention to go in there, take Jorge Masvidal down, and try to control him for 25 minutes and beat him up that way. He can't, or he shouldn't stand with him. He probably can and survive. He shouldn't, because he can dominate this fight on the ground, and I think he does that. And I think this is one of those ones where I open up the internet on Monday morning or whatever. Biggest flop of year, UFC 272 main card underdelivers or whatever. So the good news is the rest of the card is stacked to the gills. And
I'm looking at it right now. You got to walk me through this thing.
Okay, so we'll start out. To open it up, obviously we got Sergey Spivak versus Greg Hardy. Everyone knows Greg Hardy. Everyone wants to see Greg Hardy get knocked out, choked out, whatever. Look, the fact this dude keeps getting to open pay-per-views, his personal stuff aside, like I'm not a fan of any of that, obviously, but he's also just like not good enough to be chilling here in this spot over and over again. And they're feeding him guys who are pretty green to the UFC, so it's neither here nor there really who wins in the eyes of most fans. But like it's it's gonna be a swang and bang kind of ordeal. Either that or somebody's getting choked, and by somebody I mean Greg.
I heard he weighed in at 291. Is that even a fight at that weight?
No, 265 is the cut. I'm sure walking into the octagon, guys like Francis Ngannou are closer to 275, 280 pounds, but you got to weigh in at 265. And I think you lose a certain percentage of your purse for every pound over 3 that you are.
Well, he just apparently somebody said he weighed in at 291.
Oh, geez. Well, I hope 291 pounds of Greg Hardy gets knocked the fuck out on Saturday.
It might happen. I mean, Spivak's a minus 195 favorite, so it might be another punching bag session for him.
But this is, I think, where this one just turns up to 10. Kevin Holland versus Alex Oliveira, and that's Cowboy Oliveira, the other cowboy you might know, Brazilian cowboy is what you guys might know him out there as. This is just going to be super fan friendly. This is Kevin Holland can't stop a takedown and doesn't want to be down there anyways. Good news is that Cowboy has no intention to go. He's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, I believe, and he wants to stand there, throw hands, throw kicks, elbows, all of that, get dirty in the clinch. Kevin Holland's the same way, and Kevin Holland talks a lot.
Okay,
this one is like, I'm a huge Kevin Holland fan. Okay, I don't think he can beat anybody in the top half of 170 pounds, but I think he poses real problems for other guys. He's just, or 185, I think. He's just too poor wrestling defense and stuff like that. And he's, he gets hyped up for being this jiu-jitsu guy and all this stuff. And he's actually much better than we think. That's the classic line with Kevin Holland. Oh, he's a better wrestler than you think. He's a better Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy than you think. He's never shown that, but he won't have to. And this one's going to be fun, man. This is the one where I think, like, this is the one fight on the card you got to be in front of your TV for.
Okay, that's good to know. So Kevin Holland minus 330 favorite. I mean, so it sounds like you think he's going to win. No value on the plus 260 of Oliveira, or it's a brawl. So anything can happen. I mean, what do you think? Where would you go with this?
I mean, I think the only way I could see Oliveira winning would be catching a choke at some point.
Okay.
And to me, I don't see that happen. I think this is going to be one of those ones that you run back on YouTube with the subtitles on because you want to hear what he was saying in the middle of throwing punches. That's who he is, man. This guy is if he could wrestle, he'd be the biggest star in MMA.
Oh man, gee! All right, now I'm excited for that fight. And this one I'm a little excited for when I was watching the preview. So Bryce Mitchell, he's kind of becoming a weird star in his own right. You know, wants to be on a farm. I think still lives on a farm. Does like farm workouts to get ready for this. He's 14-1 against Edson Barboza. This is from all the research I've done supposed to be an even fight. They like Mitchell a little bit better. What's your thoughts on this one?
Well, first of all, two of my favorite fighters in the entire organization right here. Bryce Mitchell this is the guy who has been asking for camo shorts for 2 years. He'll openly tell you about the time that he got a drill caught in his private parts and ripped up one of his testicles. That's a
Oh
real
my
thing.
God.
And on top of that, I think there's one twister ever landed in the history of the UFC, and his last 2 fights he's gotten it. So, so
Wow.
this is a guy he's opportunistic to say the least, and he's funky, and and I think you'll understand this, but he's a civilized redneck when he's fighting. If if you know what I'm talking about, he's the kid at your high school that was packing Copenhagen at 15, and he's always wrestling, but he's down to fight everybody. This is what happens if he gets really good.
Oh
And
my
he's rolling in there against Edson Barboza at featherweight, who after making the jump, everyone was like, what, are you going to cut your leg off? How are you going to get down there? Still fast, still explosive, still powerful, still the guy that when you look up, your ultimate knockouts in the history of the UFC, this is a guy that's going to pop up probably more than once in the top 20. So it's a style clash for sure. I like Bryce to bring it to the ground and win by sub. But I wouldn't be surprised if Edson kept him at distance with some leg kicks and won by decision either. But I'm going to lean Bryce in this one.
Okay. Good to know. I already mentioned it, minus 155 favorite. Barboza plus 130. So a little closer than we thought. And then now Rafael Dos Anjos, I mean, he's a champion in his own right, kind of a low-key legend. He's going to have to fight somebody who's filling on a 4 days notice. So that's interesting. I mean, who does that benefit? The guy who's been preparing for one fighter, or the guy coming on 4 days notice, like, hey, now I can do whatever I want here, basically.
In certain situations, I would say, like in UFC 196, I was all over Diaz over Conor just because the cardio difference. I think some guys are, ready. McConnell just fought, right? So he put his body through that, and then he's fighting Rafael dos Anjos, who is like a cardio machine. This is like I think there's a video, I can't remember who he's fighting. It's like a 72 punch combo or something like that, where there was like no breaks, and he's just going. And this is what he does. He's an incredible wrestler. He's a very, very good volume. He's basically like a 155 Colby Covington.
Okay.
Is what we have. I think he made the jump up or jump down, and he's really good. And I think that Moicano taking this fight is going to gain him some goodwill with fans. But this is, for all intents and purposes, this is a free one. As close as they can get in fighting. And now that I said that, Moicano's going to come out spinning head kick or something right off the bat. But Dos Anjos is a professional, and he's a cardio maniac. And I think that if they both had, 8 weeks to train for this, I would still go with Dos Anjos.
Well, Dos Anjos a minus 160 favorite, not as long as I thought, a little shorter than I thought, being below 200 there, just the way you describe it. So that's something to keep an eye, especially two Brazilians fighting each other. I'm sure they are at least familiar with each other in a way. So it might have to lean Dos Anjos with you there. Now, obviously, the main event, you touched on it. You think Colby's going to win. You think he's going to beat Jorge Masvidal. You don't think it's going to be an insane fight or a firework fight that both these guys are promising. Both these guys coming out on the stretcher. I like Covington in this fight. I mean, when he fought Usman, it was clear that that's the best fighter Usman's ever faced. And it was clear that Colby is like exceptionally really good. Then if Usman wasn't in that division, he'd be the undisputed champion. I mean, he's just technical, elite wrestler, has pop in those hands. Jorge, you just never know because he just could drop you at any second because he's got a sledgehammer in those gloves. I think you're right, Tyson, when I'm thinking about this. I think Colby's going to do everything he can just to demoralize him on the ground and really just show he just beat his ass. I don't think he needs to go for a one hit knockout. And you said it. He wants to torture him in there. I'm going to make him suffer. That leads me to believe he's going to try to just whoop him on the ground, prolong this fight, and make sure that Masvidal can't hit him with one of those hammers.
Yeah, and I think one thing to note in this fight early is, first of all, Moss has really good takedown defense, but I think he's maybe the most underrated scrambler in MMA. Like if Colby shoots and he doesn't get it right away, and they're scrambling for a position, Jorge Masvidal is really, really good at that. Again, these guys have trained together for a long time. They have done these kinds of drills and probably sparred with each other hundreds of times. So it's going to be, if Colby can take care of him in the scrambles, then I don't see any way for George to win. But if George can land like a short elbow in one of those situations and stumble Colby, or even just get him thinking about it, it'll benefit him greatly. But I think it has to happen, somewhat early, because look, yeah, Colby got his jaw broke by Usman the first time, but the dude can take a shot. And Jorge, for as much as fame as he's gained, he really has beat Nate Diaz, Ben Askren, and Darren Till in the last 3 years, and Leon Edwards backstage. So like those guys in like 3 years, Askren, as soon as he retired, he had 2 hip replacements, got knocked out by a YouTuber. Nate Diaz, first of all, not natural 170, just kind of does that at this point because he doesn't want to cut. It was a horrible matchup for him. And Maz is just bigger and stronger than him. It was kind of like what I envisioned. That was watching the number 5 welterweight in the world fight an unranked guy at welterweight. That's closer to what that was. And then the Darren Till one was so long ago, and that was off Moss's return from being on a reality TV show. So for all this thug Jesus or street Jesus stuff that he says about himself, I just he's gonna have to bring it, because I think there's a real shot that this gimmick, and like I like Jorge Masvidal, but this thing that he's doing with dressing like Tony Montana and all this stuff can only take you so far, because you got beat the fuck up twice in a row by Kamaru Usman. If you lose this one, then the star power goes out the window.
Yeah, and I think he knows that too. And Colby said it though, man. He just the way you laid it out. He's like, who's he beat? Like, who's he beat recently? And look at who I've beat, and look who I stood in the ring with and almost beat. And that was Kamaru Usman, who's the undisputed best, probably best ever in that weight class. So I can't wait for this fight, Tyson. I think I'm going to buy it, and I don't say that very often about UFC or boxing fights. Like, if it's big though, I'll give them. I'll buy the card, because I respect that, especially on a big one. I think the last one I bought was the Usman Covington fight, and that entire card was insane. So maybe I'm the good luck for the UFC. I don't know.
Or you're just a Colby guy.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he sells. This is who he sells. Me,
yeah.
This schmucks like me who don't know any better.
Just you. Yeah, you're his demographic.
All right, Tyson, let's get out of here. As always, like, subscribe, and share to the podcast. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, whichever one you prefer. Please subscribe, share it with your friends. You don't want to miss it. We're putting out new episodes next week. We could have a big guest on, a fun one. We'll be talking college basketball. Somebody who's played against Patrick Ewing, somebody who played in the Big East, played against some legends of that old conference. We'll see if we can swing that. I think that'll be a great conversation to have. So keep an eye out for that. Follow us on Instagram @_ the roundtable pod _ Follow me on Twitter @BWakai, and then follow Tyson on Instagram @Tyson Gentry. We don't bite. Feel free to slide in our DMs. Maybe you disagree with what we said in this podcast. Who would agree to your owners, players? Who, share it with us. Who you like March Madness? Any questions? Ask us. We will answer it on this pod. And I know Tyson loves doing that and interacting with him.
Yeah, man. And, we're getting back up into, I think we're into theoretical time in the NFL, which is one of my favorite times to talk about. Because, yes, we're in the NBA season now and stuff, but we're not going to try to come on here every week and say, well, here are the standings, and then just give you like an overview of what's going on. Because, we'll talk about how good Harden looks, but outside of that, like, shit doesn't really change in the NBA. Like it's more and more of the same. But yeah, I think we got some good stuff going.
Absolutely. A lot of good stuff coming. So we appreciate you listening as always. Until next time, guys. Peace.